Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of Outcomes of Ambition. I'm Jonathan Basnet, the founder at Venditio, and this week I'm joined by Matt Burge and Matt Dixon, who are both top-performing salespeople at Seismic. Seismic, for people that aren't familiar, is a sales enablement and marketing orchestration platform that improves close rates and helps companies close bigger deals. So I'm going to hand over to Matt and Matt to introduce themselves and give a bit more context to who they are and what Seismic is. But if you want to check out the first episode from the last couple of weeks with Ollie Sharp at SalesLoft, there'll be a link in the comments below. So Matt, fire away.
Lovely. Thank you, Jonathan. And I think first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting Matt and I onto this episode. I saw the one with Ollie Sharp at SalesLoft and thought it was fantastic. They're a really good partner of ours. Yeah. But lovely to meet you, and thank you to everyone joining today as well. So my name is Matt Burge. I'm one of the senior directors, part of the sales team covering Northern Europe at Seismic. So Jonathan, you did give a lovely sort of introduction and overview into who we are there. So not to add too much on that. But for those of you who don't know, Jonathan gave a very good account. But in short, our kind of main goal really at Seismic is to better align sales and marketing teams to go to market more effectively. So the results of that is better enabling salespeople with the right content to accelerate and drive their deal cycles. And then for marketing, it's about ensuring that they've got a central place to manage all of their content, distribute that to the right teams and right individuals, but actually starting to provide the marketing team with analytics and insights into how their content is actually performing. So empowering CMOs and marketing leaders to actually tie their content back to ROI. So lovely to join you. Thank you for bringing us in, and I'll hand over to Matt to intro himself as well.
Brilliant. I think Matt covered most of it, so I won't add much more other than So as Matt mentioned, he's one of the senior sales directors. I'm one of the SDRs, BDRs, whatever you like to call it within your organisation, and my job is to support Matt in building pipeline. So following up on leads, driving into target accounts, and generating interest. Once that interest is obviously built, we then look to take them down an education cycle and sales cycle, with the ultimate aim, as we all know, of closing revenue for the business, and with a particular focus on Northern Europe and expanding our presence in the region.
Brilliant. So a big part of what this content's about is really sharing the story of people within the SaaS community, how they got into it, how they became successful. So I guess that's the question, really. How did you both get into SaaS?
I think it's a great question, and I'll take that first, Matt, if you don't mind. For me, it was a really interesting journey coming into the industry. I mean, prior to Seismic, I'd never worked in SaaS. Predominantly, I'd been in sort of the recruitment sector, and then went down more of an account management route. And it was actually by chance that I kind of stumbled across Seismic. Funnily enough, Seismic acquired a previous company called Savo back in 2018. And one of my family friends bought Seismic, which was Savo, at Nokia at the time. And she basically recommended that I get in contact with the sales team. I think one of the chaps who came over from the US was looking at building the region, and she knew that I was kind of wanting to move from where I was, and said, Matt, I think you should really speak to the team at Seismic. It's a really innovative platform, piece of technology, and the sales enablement space is something that she was really passionate about. So from speaking with her and kind of gathering a bit of insight into, okay, what is SaaS? Because I mean, for those of you who know me, I'm probably not the most technically minded bloke in the world. So it was a big sort of learning curve for me to really get acquainted and immerse myself into the world of SaaS. And when I started digging into Seismic, and when I saw the technology for the first time, I was amazed at what the SaaS industry and kind of platforms within that space could really do. And from being in sales for pretty much all of my career and 5 years prior to joining, since seeing solutions like ourselves in the sales enablement space, but also then looking at, I know you had Ollie Sharp from SalesLoft on the call last week, solutions like SalesLoft Outreach within that sales engagement place, just seeing how they transformed how salespeople went to market really blew my mind. And I think the great thing about SaaS vendors and SaaS companies is we all use our own product as well. So I know when Ollie was on the call, he's very passionate about SaaS, but also passionate about the SalesLoft product because they use it. And it's the same for us here at Seismic. When I came in and saw really what the platform could do and the value it had to me, I was completely sold on joining. And it's been one hell of a ride the last sort of 2.5 years, and long may it continue.
And Matt, what about yourself?
Yeah, so there's going to be a theme here. I think I was also in recruitment, similar to Matt, and actually rewinding a little bit. So I graduated and ended up in working for a gold company. So I did geology at uni. Realised that after a year or so doing that it wasn't really for me in terms of lifestyle and just my general general feel for it wasn't there. I fell into recruitment.
As everyone does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I really enjoyed my time in recruitment. It was a really good learning experience and super interesting. But I actually spoke with a former colleague who had left my recruitment business and joined Seismic, and he basically just told me how good it was, and the opportunity within software itself, as well as Seismic. And I was sold quite quickly, if I'm honest. And then I joined the business as an SDR roughly about 15, 16 months ago now. So I've been here. Matt, you've been here about a year just before I started, but then I joined as an SDR, and Matt was my inside sales manager at the time, as it were. And I had about 2 months in the office, and then I've been at home ever since.
Oh no.
Yeah.
What's just a bit of an aside, what's the learning curve like transitioning quite quickly and coming out of a different industry?
I think that's a really good question. I think I can speak from a recruitment perspective, right? Like, what's the difference? I think Matt touched on it quite well. There was just kind of the technical knowledge you need. I mean, even as a salesperson in Seismic at the moment, and probably in a lot of software businesses, like, you don't need to be that technical because you're only doing it from a high level. You're just trying to obviously present the value prop of the business, and then sales engineers and the more techie people within the business are the ones that can really start to show how it all works, how it's configured. But equally, even having to do it at a high level was a real change from recruitment, where you have a really good breadth of knowledge, but it's not that deep because you've got so much going on.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of the nature of the game, whereby you come to Seismic and it's one product, we have multiple SKUs, but it's kind of one piece of software and multiple different aspects to that. What it means is that your knowledge goes from being really, really broad and not very deep to being really narrow, really focused on something, but having to become increasingly deeper. So it's that shift in mindset, which takes a bit of time, and definitely took me, I'd say, 6 months to really get to grips with the platform and how it works, and just change that mentality, really. But hopefully I've got there. Yeah.
You have, mate.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think I would certainly agree with that. I think the transition for people wanting to get into SaaS, and both Matt and I have come from a recruitment industry, so it's quite easy for us to talk about that transition. Other sectors may be different, but I definitely agree with what you're saying there, Matt, around becoming more of a specialist. And I think truly understanding the power that SaaS companies can bring, and I think the level of return and results. For me, that was really eye-opening. I think the transition for me when I moved into Seismic in the world of SaaS was actually quite refreshing, because I actually found that I believed really in what I was selling, and I believed in what Seismic and other SaaS vendors in the space are really doing. Because once you see the product and you see what it can do and the level of return it can have and how it actually changes the way businesses operate, I think it's a really easy thing to then buy into. So I think, again, I saw Ollie's session last week. Again, you can see how passionate people are when they talk about SaaS vendors who are working for innovative and leading vendors in the space, because I think everyone within those organizations and everyone within Seismic truly believes that this product is so innovative and it is changing the way businesses operate. I mean, the results and the level of return that we can bring to our customers is proven. Unlike other industries where the results aren't as black and white, you can clearly see the impact that SaaS solutions and the kind of technology sector is having on businesses. And I think the investment in technology for a lot of companies has obviously been accelerated over the last 12 to 18 months with everything that's gone on. I think you've seen a lot of people now sit up in more archaic organizations, let's say, and actually now digital transformation is coming to the forefront. Investment in sales tech is coming to the forefront. And I think the sales technology space has been inherently an area that's been underinvested in. You know, kind of the marketing side has been heavily invested in, other areas of the business, whereas sales has been something that I think from a technology standpoint, a lot of businesses haven't invested that heavily in. And I think over the last 12 to 18 months, we've certainly seen a shift, not only in the increase in demand, but I think sales enablement and other programs similar to that are starting to really become part of businesses' plans. And I think they're taking that investment in technology seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been a classic antagonism between sales and marketing, as in they've quite often not aligned. And that's just seems painfully inefficient. But I think what really interested me about the Seismic technology was really, it's trying to solve a decades-old problem at scale. So I think it's it's definitely really interesting. But I'd echo your point in terms of sales tech as an emerging market. It's definitely been underinvested in, but the speed of which it's progressed has been fantastic. So yeah, it's really interesting to see these types of companies. But I'm going to kind of flip into your guys' careers a little bit more because I picked up on a thread that Matt made that you were his BDR manager. So do you mind kind of giving us a bit of a background to your progression? Because I know that's going to be interesting for how people can kind of achieve promotions and what are the career paths and things like that. Because it's a question I'm getting asked all the time, especially people maybe at an SDR level. It's, where do I go? What's on offer to me? And it sounds like you've gone and achieved that. So yeah.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And I think, I'm very fortunate with the success that I've had at Seismic. I've worked under and worked for some fantastic managers. I've got some great colleagues who really push and kind of motivate me. And I've been lucky enough with the people I've surrounded myself, certainly who are part of our UK team. Some of the more senior and kind of seasoned salespeople have really taken me under their wing and invested their time in me. And it's really enabled me to, I think, accelerate my career. And going back to one of your earlier points, Jonathan, around why I think Matt and I got into SaaS as well. And one of the biggest draws of it was really, I think, that career progression and the ability to really accelerate, your career. And I've certainly been a product of that. And Seismic, will always have a close place to my heart because it's enabled me to really climb the ladder at a much quicker rate. And I truly believe that I've worked hard for it as well and have delivered, and I kind of seen as a valued member. But Seismic has certainly enabled me to accelerate my career further than I thought I would do in the space of time that I've had. So my route in, so I joined as a BDR, one of the first BDRs within kind of the UK and EMEA region. So Seismic expanded over to Europe in terms of having boots on the ground, if you will, back in early 2018. And I joined in October. So myself and another colleague, Will, he and I have kind of worked with each other and tracked our career progression pretty much in parallel. And he's a really good friend. We joined as basically the first two BDRs in the region. So we were primarily tasked with, at the time, helping build and cement a footprint for Seismic within Europe. So we kind of had free reign. It was an absolute blast. We were working with a guy who came over from the US, Jeff, who remains to this day a great friend of mine and a very good mentor. And we basically just started to build the team from there. And the great thing about joining Seismic at the time that I did is, by virtue of joining in the early stages, it was almost like a startup within a startup. The European business was kind of very immature. We were finding our feet, we were growing.
Did it have like a different look and feel to the US business?
It did, yeah. I think, we've mirrored a lot operationally because the US market, they've been incredibly successful, and the team over there have built a fantastic business and a fantastic engine. And I think what the team did really well was they brought across expats to keep the culture of Seismic. So we have a core team that came over to the UK from the US to really cement the culture of the business. And then, the execs hired really well. Kevin O'Regan, who runs our region, is a great leader. He's got really good management with him as well. And I think we've hired brilliantly. So for me, I sort of grew organically within the organization. And as we grew, my responsibilities grew, went into a team lead role. Matt joined the business. He and I worked very closely together for about 12 months. And then last August, I was lucky enough, went through an internal recruitment process and was selected to move into outside sales. So I've been covering the mid-market role now since August last year.
How's that transition been? Is it markedly different, or do you kind of grown slowly into it?
Do you know what? I think the one thing I would always say to people that are looking at making that transition from either BDR, SDR straight to AE or into a team lead role and then into AE, I would encourage you, find the best sales rep within the organization that you're currently at and shadow them.
Yeah.
Shadow them for at least a quarter, ask to be on their calls, on their demos, ask to be involved in later stage deals so you can start to get an insight into how they work and how they operate. That's certainly what I did. And I, like I said, I've been lucky enough to work with some great people here and have people that have really invested a lot of time in my success. The other thing that I've really found about making that transition is I thought I would be selling more, if you will. You think when you go into outside sales, you're going to be there on the front line, sell, sell, sell. And actually what I've realized is it's almost more of a sort of project management role in the sense that I'm predominantly managing people and ultimately getting people to sell almost on your behalf. So, for example, as you progress through an opportunity, rather than hearing what our customer success organization is like from myself and how we support businesses, you bring in the relevant parties to support you on that. You work with a sales engineer who will be able to go into the more technical side of the platform and answer those aspects. So what you're really doing is almost like a chessboard, and you're managing the pieces and you're managing that opportunity and managing your champion through that sales cycle to close. So that for me was probably the biggest transition, going from, okay, I'm going to be on demos all the time and sell to actually realizing, okay, I've got a great team around me and I've got specialists for each part of the organization. I need to leverage those people to support me to sell more effectively, if that makes sense.
So it's like conducting an orchestra.
Almost. herding sheep at times.
Yeah, cats. Matt, I'm going to switch on to you. Do you mind just giving us kind of a bit of a rundown of kind of your achievements, what you've done in the role?
I thought you were going to ask me to give a rundown of how good a manager Matt Burge was, but I mean,
you can drop him in it if you want.
I mean, he was terrible, but no, he's no. On a serious note, it's kind of been. I can start. I'll start with Matt though. Like so when I first joined, Jeff, who Matt referenced, was our kind of overarching inside sales director, if you like. But he moved back to the US with COVID and everything, and then kind of left Matt Burge in a bit of a place whereby he was almost having to take on a bit of responsibility. So we found our incumbent leader, Craddock, who is excellent, by the way. But in that interim, Matt was kind of our inside sales manager and team lead. So when I first started, I had to work with Matt really, really closely. He basically trained me around Seismic, but also the best way to go to market with Seismic and value prop and stuff. So that was quite cool. And then as he transitioned into that AE role, I was actually fortunate enough to keep that relationship with him, whereby, as I referenced, I became his kind of designated SDR, which was quite cool, really, because we'd had that working relationship from an inside perspective, and then we were almost just continuing it on from a development perspective, whereby I literally saw Matt's change in his job.
Yeah,
he'd gone from being basically a coach, if you like, an inside sales coach, and having to ensure that I was doing the right activity inside sales, to actually having to then sell the product and close deals. So that was super good exposure and insight for me to see Matt do that over the last 16 months or so. But remind me, what was the question? I think I went off on a tangent.
No, it's fine. So it's really how you guys kind of effectively partner together as an AE and BDR. Like, how do you get that chemistry? Also, if you wouldn't mind expanding on, do you run particular patterns or plays together? Are there things you find like that are particularly successful that you think maybe the wider kind of enterprise sales community might benefit from?
Yeah, so I guess I was nearly on the right track. The relationship between me and Matt. Yeah, I wasn't far. How we managed to partner effectively is probably literally what I just spoke about there. The fact that, I think we had. I mean, you're not always going to have the existing relationship, right, as an SDR with an AE. So I was blessed in some regards because I knew Matt before he went into the role, and I knew what he expected. I knew how he worked. I knew what he wanted to get from an SDR as well. I just had to do it for him, which was cool. But the reason we have really effectively partnershiped, that was great, obviously. But then I think also we're very, very structured in terms of like how we go to market. I mean it in the sense that we check in on a Monday for an hour every single week. We'd run through Matt's target accounts. We then mutually agree where we think we should focus our efforts. And what I mean by mutually is that I think hearing from other SDRs, not necessarily at Seismic, but just from in the field of SDRs and BDRs, is that a lot of the time the AEs can be portrayed as people that just say, "I want you to do this for me. I want you to do that. This is exactly where I think you should be spending your time." But with Matt, I think what we had was I had the respect that obviously I was working for him in some sense, but also he listened to my own feedback because he knew that I also probably knew some of the accounts better than him because I was on the ground speaking to these people, getting the feedback, whether it's no's from emails, no's from phone calls, whatever it may be. So I knew where I should be spending my time. I knew my business, if you like, pretty well. So that hour we spent, we really just use it as a discussion to understand actually where are we going to get to revenue quickest? Where should we be spending our time? And then put a plan around that. So whether that's I want you to be messaging this week, I want you to be calling into this account this week, whatever it may be, was always very much mutually agreed. And I think that really helped motivate me and also ensure Matt was getting exactly what he wanted. And then we'd end up finishing the end of the week on a Friday, just running through what went well, what didn't go so well. Let's regroup on Monday and go again. So that for me, that structure really ensured that we were constantly tracking where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I put the success mostly down to that, if I'm being frank.
I think as well, Jonathan, just to add a little bit more colour onto Matt's answer there as well. I've always seen the relationship, and I've had it really nicely for both sides. Having been a BDR and an SDR and worked with AEs, I understand what good looks like. So I wanted to ensure when Matt and I were going to be aligned together, we took all the good things that we knew about that relationship and implemented them. I think the key thing about strong BDR to AE relationships is both sides understanding how each other are motivated, how each other are compensated, and what is driving each of them. Now, Matt and I were lucky enough that we'd known each other for about a year previously. Yeah. I'd managed him. We get along. We are mates. So we do have a very good understanding of each other, how we work. But I do appreciate, like Matt said, a lot of the time that isn't going to be the case. You may be a new BDR, a new SDR coming into an organization and potentially being paired with a sales rep who is 15, 20, 25 years your senior, perhaps, who has been in the industry a long time. I think the key thing is to, like Matt said, mutual agreement, understand how each other are driven, how each other are compensated, how each other are motivated. But the key thing for me and the great relationships that I've seen through the BDR and AE alignment is a BDR never works for an AE. You don't work for an AE. They're not your boss. And any AE that has that thought process, I think go to your manager and raise that as a query. The relationships that I've seen blossom and the reps who ultimately have performed best are the reps that see their BDR and their SDR as a partner, as a strategic partner. Because my success is predominantly based on Matt's ability to support me as well. And I think both understanding again how each other are motivated, how you're compensated, but seeing each other as strategic partners, I think will just inherently breed a good relationship. So like Matt said, we would mutually agree on where we think we should focus. And I think Matt made a great point there. One of the things that we want to teach our BDRs that join the business and part of the kind of onboarding program is we want people to take account and responsibility. So Matt said there, I want him to see the accounts that we're going after as his mini business, the same way that I do as an AE. I see, my target accounts with my big number at the top that I need to hit this year as my book of business. And I think the team and kind of Seismic have done a really good job in going through that onboarding process, making people really, I think, feel attached to that. And the other thing that we didn't mention as well is hold each other accountable. Matt has never been shy to tell me if I'm not supporting him in the right way and vice versa. And I think, have the confidence as a BDR, if you are getting challenged by your AE, to, you know, kind of stand up to them, if you will. And at the end of the day, the successful relationships are the ones where you see each other as partners, because it is not a I work for them type relationship.
This is a really positive message, because we're talking about things like, you know, accountability and ownership, which are, I think, in, you know, whatever stage you are at in your career, those are some of the most gratifying things that you can have. And, you know, the SDR role can get a bad rap. Like, people kind of see it as like, you have to take the medicine to get into it, do a year, get out of there as fast as possible. But, you know, I think you've done over a year now, and I think the way you're portraying it from a Seismic angle is it's got much more of a kind of a positive dimension to it than, you know, just being strapped to a phone and being bullied by an AE. So
exactly that. And I think our CRO, I mean, stresses the importance of the inside sales team. And Ed was the first BDR for Seismic when he started the company. You know, he was the frontline inside salesperson.
It's the hardest
when there
job.
was exactly. And I think everyone at Seismic understands the importance and the role that the inside team play. And, you know, I think Ed will always be an advocate of this. Every deal starts with an inside sales rep getting that first meeting. You know, deals don't just happen. Someone has to, and especially in target accounts where we're going to try and win business, you know, inbound's a little bit different, but when you're going and you're actively prospecting, that deal will ultimately trace its roots back to someone within the inside sales organization, getting that first meeting, delivering a great pitch, and getting that buy-in. So I think if businesses aren't putting a lot of emphasis and importance on inside sales, then they're doing something wrong.
And just to add to that, I think, Jonathan, you said the BDR role can be something that's sort of under the illusion, sorry, not the illusion, imagined as a role where you've got to just take your medicine and then you get to where you want to be in a year and 2 years' time. You've got to put your time in, should I say? But I've loved my job. Do you know what I mean? There's not part of me being in this SDR role I thought, oh my God, this is, there's obviously ups and downs. It's a sales role. I've been in recruitment, right? There's obviously ups and downs. It's not all plain sailing. Like, obviously it's not linear, but like, if I'm looking and reflecting, like, do I enjoy my job? How I enjoy my time? 100%. Like, I've not been in this job thinking, my God, I can't wait to get to the next step. I've always had, like, you know, that motivation, ambition to get, you know, up, to get promoted and go into other roles in the business, and that's fine, right? But I've still enjoyed my time, and I think a big emphasis to that is the culture that's instilled by the AEs and Seismic, whereby I work really well with Matt. I've also got another outside rep, Stu, and that mutual partnership is exactly the same, and that's replicated in success for both of them, right? Where they've both done really well, but also, like, I've enjoyed my job, and we've made a really good team.
Brilliant. It's funny you mentioned the word linear, actually, because we're going to move on to the next topic, which is your promotion. Congratulations. And I think it can be perceived from the outside a little bit like there is just one career path when you move from SDR, and the natural place to go is just into AE. But that's not the case for you. So do you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess rewind a little bit. When I joined the business as an SDR, to your point, Jonathan, like, there is that presumption perhaps that the next step's AE. That's where you're going, right? This is the natural progression. I'm working with them every day. It's almost like I do the first part of the sales cycle.
They do it.
Yeah, they do the second part of the sales cycle. Like, it's like one step, two step. It seems really obvious. But when I came into the business, one of the guys who in the inside team, Tom Birch, he said to me, he was like, you know, get your feet at the table, understand the role, perform, and you know, obviously do your job really, really well. But he said also, don't just presume that your next career step is AE. Like, there's a lot of different business units, or teams, should I say, within Seismic that are all equally integral to success, and also very plausible career opportunities. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, what are they? What does this mean? And he was like, well, look, you've got sales engineering, you've got customer success, you've got partnerships, you've got professional services, and you've got, you know, outside sales, account exec roles. He's like, there's a whole host. And I thought, yeah, that's quite interesting. So I almost, when I first joined, I almost like took a bit of a back seat on committing to one of the roles and thought, I'm going to speak to every single team and understand what I actually think might be a good fit. And over time, I actually went through a development plan with one of the leaders in the business, and it really helped me understand what I enjoyed most about my job, what my motivations were, and also off the back of that, which one of these teams would probably align with my next step. And it happens to be customer success that I'm going into now. So that's the promotion that I've recently got on start in the next couple of weeks, and super excited to get going. But it's kind of one of those things whereby if had I not done that, I'd have just kind of been another sheep and gone into an AE role. And there's nothing wrong with going into AE role. There's a reason people want to go into progress into that. That's absolutely cool. But I think the important thing is to recognise that it's not the only route, right? It's not the only route. Find what works for you. Find what your vibe is, I guess make the right decision for you based on what you enjoy most about your job, what you feel like you're best at doing, as opposed to just because it's the done thing.
Yeah.
You raise a great point there, Matt, as well, mate, because I think as well, Jonathan, there is that perception, like you say, that it is a very linear route. And it goes back to one of your earlier points on what kind of got us both into SaaS. Yeah. We both talked about career progression, but exactly what you've seen there with Matt. There's so many parts of the business that you can go into when you join a SaaS company. And each part of any customer-facing organization has a sales element to it. So Matt is moving into customer success. Our customer success team sell probably just as much as the outside sales team, because predominantly what they're looking to do, renewals is selling, proving the ROI so that customer renews. In terms of expanding the licenses and share of wallet and getting more of that customer onto the platform and using the product. So I think again, just taking this back to any SDRs that are going to be watching this and looking for a bit of inspiration, don't just think that your progression within a SaaS company is going to be linear. We've had people within the organization, within Seismic, that have gone, like Matt has, into customer success. We had a lady who was part of our inside sales team has moved into a marketing role about 3 months ago and have joined the marketing organization. We've had people that have moved into sales engineering who have got a real appetite to learn more of what the product does and are really passionate about demoing. So I think, my advice to anyone that is thinking about their next move within SaaS from BDR, go and speak to each of those team leads and kind of understand what a day in a life of a sales engineer is, a customer success manager is, before you kind of make up your mind.
Yeah. And I think it's really positive that Seismic is giving the platform for that to happen, because, I get to recruit for lots of SaaS companies and that's definitely not the norm. So what do you think it is about the Seismic culture that is really pushing this?
Well, I think Seismic will always want to hold on to good people and good talent. And we will always make sure that we harness that talent and find where it will fit best in the business. And I think one thing that Ed, one of our co-founders, used to always tell me is that hard work at Seismic will never go unnoticed. There's always someone watching. And I think our leadership team are so transparent and have a great sense of who's working hard within the organization. And, Matt, to give him credit, getting his recent promotion, Matt got there because he worked hard and he delivered. He was the top performer within the inside sales organization last year, won MVP at our sales kickoff earlier this year. Matt has deserved this promotion and has worked incredibly hard for it. So I have to plug that, Matt, and give you a shout out, because you worked so well, mate.
He's been super modest. He's been super modest so far. I was waiting for that to come up a bit earlier. I wasn't sure whether to drop it in or not, but.
But I think to kind of add and get onto that, I think and it goes back to your point there around the opportunity. Seismic wants good people. We want good people that work hard, that are transparent, that will buy into the culture and buy into what we're doing. Opportunities at Seismic will always present themselves, and I think that's the nature of working for a fast-paced SaaS company. If you're working hard and you're delivering in the role that you're doing, opportunities and doors will open up, and opportunities that you don't think would normally present themselves. And I think that's just by virtue of working for a very innovative, sort of fast-paced company like Seismic.
Agreed. I think the final point to add to that, if anything, was just like the openness for people to want to speak to you. Right? If I reached out to, I remember reaching out to one of our RVPs, Andy Bailey, and just having chats with him. Right? He runs the outside sales team. I didn't go into that role eventually, but I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to understand what it involved, and speaking to him was great. Right? He gave me his time, and he's obviously really senior, but super, super busy as well. And he's willing to do that. Same speaking to, Laura Keilinger, my new boss, as it were. But she spoke to me regularly as well around customer success. I spoke to the sales engineering team, spoke to partnerships, that they're open to speaking to you. And so I think it's, I think it's just important to make yourself known in the business and the route you want to go down once you figure it out. But just ensuring you have conversations with those people is super, super important.
But it's great that
I think as well, just to add again onto Matt's point, I think the key thing as well for some BDRs and where I've seen some people in the inside sales team fall short is people who are too focused on that next step. And it goes back to what I mentioned just a second ago around congratulate Matt on his promotion. Matt deserves that 100%, and he delivered in a huge way last year. And I think a lot of the times people are sort of too focused on where can I get to in an organization? Where can I go next? Rather than delivering on the role they're in. Yeah. And I think where, I've had my success, Matt has had his, and the promotions that we've had is because we've fully immersed ourselves in the role that we've been doing. And I think first and foremost, deliver on your role because everyone in the organization will be watching. And like Ed always says, hard work doesn't go unnoticed. Deliver on your role, deliver to the business. And then I think opportunities will open themselves up. Alongside what Matt said there, make yourself known to the organization. Like when I joined Seismic, there was 11 of us in the UK office. We were a very small team. So it was very easy to get to know my colleagues in the UK. But I didn't really have much interaction with the US. So I made a point to get on calls with people, out in California, out in Boston, make myself known, present myself to the team so that they knew who I was, what I was all about. And then the caveat to that is delivering your day job. And it makes those conversations a little bit more easier when you are talking to management about your next step and opportunities and where you can go within the business. I think make sure you're delivering in your role. And then again, make yourself available and kind of known to the team. Because I think a lot of the time, people may be a little bit hesitant or reserved to do that. I think, I would definitely recommend get yourself out in front of the right people and kind of make your ambitions known.
And that's the beauty of sales is because it is it's
like a meritocracy, right?
It's explicit, right? You're hitting target, you're not hitting target. Do you know what I mean? And that's almost like the beauty, the benefit is that if you're hitting target, or not just hitting, but overachieving target, like you've got justification to be almost like, I'm performing well on that role at the moment. I'm now wanting to progress. Is there an opportunity for me to do so? And it's not, it's an easy conversation, as Matt said, like you've got justification behind it. And look, it doesn't happen straight away. Like all these things, it's got to be the right time as well. But as long as you're doing the right activity in your current role and you're making yourself aware to people in the business, the route you want to go down, then I think as long as the business is doing well, you're doing well, it's almost, you'd hope, inevitable, really.
And take the time to gain exposure into the role you want to go into. I'll go back to one of my earlier points. If you really do have a burning desire to become an AE, ask to shadow an existing AE. If you've got a desire to go into customer success, ask to join some of the customer kickoff calls that the team will be presenting. If you've got an ambition to go into sales engineering, book some time in a diary with one of your sales engineers and ask them to dissect your product or your platform with you. And that, again, it goes back to Matt's point. That's a great thing about Seismic. I think if ever I've had any question, I can post it into Slack, and within 5 minutes, I've probably got 5 people emailing me, calling me, giving me an answer. It's a great collaborative environment. But for those that are at other companies looking to make that move, surround yourself with good people, surround yourself with good mentors. But I think before you try and push that transition, take some time to learn the role you're going into, because I think there's a big part here not to rush and set yourself up for success in that role. You may be delivering in your role now, but take a bit of time to learn what you're going to be walking into.
Patience is key. I think too many people keep their eye on the next role and don't, like you say, don't deliver on what they do because they're so fixated with what's next. But, I think like with anything, you've kind of got to spend time mastering a craft, and sales is a craft. I mean, people can say it's an art, but, it does take reps and time, and, you've really got to kind of spend a lot of time getting good at it, and you can't ever run before you can walk. So I think this has been some really good advice for contributors, and I think this has been a really good showcase of Seismic's culture. Like I didn't know any of this before we spoke, but I definitely think there are some differentiators between how you operate and maybe how some other companies in the wider ecosystem do. And it's I think it's a really positive message. So I know you guys are hiring at the moment fairly freely. So if there's an advert here, there's definitely opportunities at Seismic if people are into this, and it all sounds really positive. So with that, I'd like to thank Matt and Matt. I think we'll wrap up there. And yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. This has been episode 2 of Outcomes of Ambition, and we'll be back in the next couple of weeks with another one. But yeah, just a big thanks to Matt and Matt.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Jonathan.
Cheers, guys.